I met Ryan because of a broken lock. It was one of those small annoyances you ignore until it becomes a problem. The kind where your apartment door technically closes, but if you give it a solid shoulder, it'll pop right open like a saloon in an old western. And on that Thursday night, after an exhausting day, all I wanted was to crash. But I walked in to find the door half open and a stranger in my kitchen. He had one of my coffee mugs in his hand, my leftover pasta steaming in the microwave behind him, and this look on his face like I was the one interrupting him. "You live here?" he asked, calm as hell. My brain stuttered. "Yeah," I said, slowly stepping inside, phone half raised in case I needed to dial 911. "Who the hell are you?" He set the mug down. "I thought it was empty. Door was open." "That doesn't mean you get to move in." He didn't look nervous, just shrugged. It's not like I unpacked. He was younger than me, mid-20s maybe. Black hoodie, cargo pants, a backpack resting against the couch like he'd been there a while. He had sharp features, scruffy jaw, eyes that were too observant, and when he smiled, there was this weird flicker of charm under all that nerve. "Look, I'll go," he said. "Didn't mean to freak you out. I just needed somewhere to crash for a night. Didn't expect anyone to show up." "Still," I said, pointing toward the door. "Out. Now." He didn't argue. Just grabbed his backpack and slipped on his shoes. But before he left, he paused in the doorway. "I'm Ryan," he said. "Thanks for the pasta." And then he was gone. I thought that would be it. Just a weird story to tell someone at work the next day. "Yeah, some guy just let himself into my place and started heating up my leftovers. Wild, right?" But 2 nights later, I found him sitting on the stairs outside my building. Same hoodie, same backpack, a little more rain-soaked this time. He looked up at me like he was waiting. "You again?" He gave a half smile. "Didn't think you'd call the cops." I thought about it. I bet. We stared at each other for a few seconds. I should have walked past. I should have gone upstairs and slammed the door behind me. Instead, I said, "You eat yet?" We didn't talk much that night. I let him back in, gave him a plate of takeout I hadn't touched. He sat on the floor while I stayed on the couch, both of us watching some rerun I wasn't really paying attention to. He didn't ask for anything, didn't try to make small talk. When he left, again without asking to stay, he just said, "Thanks," and disappeared into the night. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. The third time, I came home and found him fixing the lock. "I figured it was the least I could do," he said, not looking up from where he was crouched with a screwdriver. "Still not perfect, but it won't open unless someone actually uses a key now. You break into places often." "Nope, just yours." He was smiling again, not smug, just there, like he belonged. "You can't keep doing this," I said, even as I stepped over the threshold. "Doing what?" "Showing up like this." He finally stood, wiped his hands on his hoodie, and said something that caught me off guard. "Why not?" I opened my mouth, closed it again. Because the thing was, I didn't really mind, and that was the real problem. The first night he stayed over, it wasn't planned. We'd gotten into this weird rhythm over the next week. He'd show up every couple of days, never unannounced, but never exactly invited either. He'd knock, I'd open the door, and there he'd be, with that same crooked grin and a quiet, "Hey." Sometimes I'd say hi, sometimes I'd just move aside and let him in. I didn't know where he went when he wasn't at my place. I didn't ask, and he never offered. That night, it started raining hard. The kind of sideways, freezing rain that soaks through your shoes and makes the city feel smaller. Ryan showed up at 9, shivering, soaked to the bone. His hoodie clung to him like a second skin, and his jeans were dripping onto my welcome mat. "Jesus," I said. "You trying to catch pneumonia?" He shrugged, teeth chattering. "Didn't time it right." I pulled him inside and grabbed a towel. "Take that off," I said, nodding at the hoodie. "I'll throw it in the dryer." "Didn't know this was a strip show," he said, but he was already tugging it off. Underneath, just a plain black t-shirt, also damp. His arms were lean, a tattoo peeking out just under his sleeve on his left bicep. I tried not to stare. He handed over the hoodie and I tossed it into the dryer along with a clean hoodie of mine. "You can borrow that," I said. "At least until yours dries." He held it up, inspecting it like it was a luxury item. "You're too good to me. You're too dramatic." But he smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made me want to look away and keep looking at the same time. We sat on the couch afterward, both of us curled under the same blanket, a dumb action movie playing in the background. Ryan had this thing where he didn't talk unless he had something to say. He didn't fill the air with noise or try to impress me. He just existed beside me, like he'd always been there. I didn't even realize I was leaning against him until I felt his head tilt slightly toward mine. "You fall asleep, or you just getting comfortable?" I blinked. "Little of both," he chuckled, low and warm. "This couch is dangerous. You start out upright and wake up drooling." "You speaking from experience?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Maybe." Sometime after midnight, I stood up and stretched. "You staying?" I asked before I could stop myself. He looked up at me. "You want me to?" I didn't say anything, just turned and walked into the bedroom. I didn't tell him to follow. Didn't ask. But a few seconds later, I heard his footsteps. He paused in the doorway, hoodie still a little damp around the edges, socks mismatched. "You sure?" I nodded. "It's fine." I climbed into bed and slid over. He hesitated just a second longer, then climbed in too. We didn't touch. Didn't say anything. Just lay there, backs turned. The space between us, small but solid. But I couldn't sleep, not with the sound of his breathing so close, not with the feel of the mattress shifting every time he moved, and not with the tension building slowly in the quiet. Then I felt it, his foot brushing against mine under the blanket. Not on purpose, not at first, but he didn't pull back. Neither did I. Sometime in the early morning, I woke up and realized we were closer. His arm was barely touching mine, his breath steady, soft against the back of my neck. It wasn't deliberate, it wasn't sexual, but it was intimate. It was more than I'd meant to allow. And still, I didn't move. The next morning, I made coffee. He sat at the counter, hair sticking up, hoodie sleeves pushed past his elbows, watching me like I was doing something fascinating. "You always make 2 cups?" he asked. "No," I said. "Just started." He smiled around the rim of the mug. "You're a good host. You're a persistent guest. Tell me to stop coming, and I will." I looked at him for a second too long, then said, "I didn't say that. Ryan didn't leave that day. He said he would. Said just after coffee, then after I warm up a bit, and then maybe after lunch." At some point, he stretched out on the couch and pulled a throw pillow under his head, looking so settled it was like he'd always been there. And I let him stay. I wasn't sure why. I'd always been the kind of guy who liked my space. I wasn't big on roommates, didn't do casual hangouts. I liked quiet, routine, control. But Ryan didn't disrupt that. He slipped in like background noise, like rain tapping on the window while you work, like the warmth from a space heater. Just there. That night, we ordered Thai and sat on the floor, eating pad see ew out of the takeout box. He didn't use a plate, said it saved dishes. I rolled my eyes but didn't push it. "Where do you go when you're not here?" I asked, finally. He chewed for a second, swallowed, and said, "Different places. Crashed with a guy the first used to work with for a while. Stayed at a friend's cousin's apartment before she moved in with her boyfriend. I'm good at borrowing couches." "So you're homeless?" He smirked without offense. "Transitionally unmoored. That's not a real phrase. Sounds better than. Guy who overstays is welcome, though." I stared at him. "You overstaying?" He didn't answer, just kept eating. It became a pattern. He didn't move in. Not officially, but his hoodie stayed on the back of my chair. His toothbrush eventually appeared in the bathroom. He started refilling the Brita without being asked, folding his own blanket in the morning, feeding my sourdough starter when I forgot. And still, he never said, "Can I stay?" or "Can I live here?" He just did, and I let him. because at some point, my apartment didn't feel quite right without him in it. One night, I came home late from work. I was pissed. Clients blowing up my inbox, subway delays, some guy shoulder-checking me and not apologizing. I was ready to kick something by the time I opened the door. And there he was, asleep on the couch, one arm over his eyes, the light from the TV flickering against his face. And just like that, I wasn't angry anymore. I dropped my bag, walked into the kitchen, and started heating up leftovers. Quiet, calm. He stirred when he smelled the food. "You okay?" he asked, voice thick with sleep. "Long day." He nodded and sat up, hair sticking up, cheeks flushed from the warmth of the blanket. "You want to talk about it?" I handed him a plate. Not really. He didn't push. We ate in silence. And when I stood to go to bed, he followed me without a word. That night, we didn't sleep on opposite sides. We didn't talk about it either. But at some point, his hand found mine under the blanket. Not by accident this time. I looked over. He was awake, barely. Just watching me. And in that quiet, where everything was soft and still and unsaid, I gave his fingers the slightest squeeze. I don't know what I expected the next morning. Distance, maybe. Regret. But instead, he was already making coffee when I got out of the shower. Morning. He said, like everything was normal, like nothing had shifted. Except everything had. Because when he handed me the mug, his fingers lingered. And when I took the first sip, he watched me like it mattered. That Sunday, we went out. Just a grocery run. But we went together. Walked through the produce aisle like some accidental couple, debating which apples were actually worth eating. He made fun of me for choosing the store-brand almond milk. I called him a hipster for buying oat. Somewhere between frozen pizza and cereal, he grabbed my arm for balance while tying his shoe and didn't let go right away, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. A few weeks in, something changed. Not loud, not dramatic, just a shift. We were lying on the bed, late, both of us in sweatpants, lights low, the sound of a passing siren outside muffled by the window. I had one arm behind my head, scrolling through something on my phone. Ryan was next to me, on his side, facing me, not pretending to be asleep. He reached out slowly and took the phone from my hand. I didn't protest. He set it on the nightstand, then looked at me for a second, long enough that I felt my chest tighten. "What?" He shook his head. "Nothing." And then he leaned in. It wasn't a kiss. Not at first. Just his forehead against mine. A breath. A pause. That space where nothing is happening, but everything is about to. And then his lips brushed mine. Soft. Careful. Like he wasn't sure if I'd pull back. I didn't. I leaned in too. The kiss stayed slow. Warm. His hand found my shirt, resting lightly on my side, thumb brushing over the fabric. I pressed back just enough to let him know I was there, that I wanted this. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us said anything right away. I could hear the city outside, the faint hum of my fridge, the shift of the mattress as he adjusted, pulling just a little closer. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. I nodded. "Yeah." He kissed me again. Slower this time, more certain. We didn't rush. That night wasn't about something intimate. It wasn't even about making out, really. It was about closeness. His forehead against my temple. My fingers trailing down his back. His breathing matching mine. He fell asleep first, one hand resting across my chest like he was afraid I'd disappear if he didn't anchor me there. I stayed awake longer than I meant to. Not because I was anxious, but because it felt so damn good just to feel him there. Like maybe this thing we were doing was more than just a fluke. The next morning he woke up before me. I found him in the kitchen, shirtless, making eggs like he'd lived here forever. Music played quietly from his phone. Something acoustic, gentle. The kind of song that fits perfectly with early sunlight through half-closed blinds. He didn't hear me come in. I leaned on the doorframe, just watching him for a second. Bare back, hair still messy, my favorite mug in his hand. He looked like home. When he finally noticed me, he gave a soft smile. "I didn't wake you, did I?" I shook my head. "You hungry?" I didn't answer. Just walked over and kissed him on the cheek. He froze for a second, then smiled wider. That afternoon, he found an old deck of cards in one of my drawers. Challenged me to gin rummy. Called me grandpa when I beat him. He sprawled out on the floor while I sat against the couch, his foot resting casually against my leg like we'd done this 100 times. It felt easy, real. Like I'd skipped some chapter of my life and landed in the one I was always supposed to be living. Later that night, after we'd eaten and half-watched a movie, he turned to me and asked, "Do you think we're pretending this is casual?" I blinked. What? I mean, do you think we're lying to ourselves about what this is? I didn't know how to answer, because I had told myself it was nothing serious, that he was just a temporary thing, a temporary person. But then why did I keep hoping he wouldn't leave? Why did I know how he liked his eggs, and which hoodie he wore when he was cold, and the exact sound of his laugh when he was trying not to wake me up? "I don't know," I said honestly. He nodded. "That's okay," he whispered. "I'm not in a rush. I needed to ask." It had been a month since Ryan started staying over. And by staying over, I mean he'd only gone out twice, both times saying something vague like, "I've got to take care of a thing." No details, no return time. He always came back that night or the next morning, hoodie smelling faintly of cigarettes and cold air, acting like he'd never left. So when he didn't come back one night, and then not the next morning, something started to feel off. I waited, told myself not to text him, that it wasn't that kind of thing, that we hadn't defined anything, that he didn't owe me an explanation. But by noon the following day, I caved. Me. "Everything okay?" No reply. I left it there. Tried to work. Failed miserably. The apartment felt hollow. His toothbrush was still on the sink. Hoodie still on the chair. But the silence felt louder now, like it was echoing. That night, I barely slept. Every time I heard footsteps in the hallway, I perked up. Nothing. I woke up groggy, pissed at myself for caring this much, for letting someone in like that, someone who could vanish without warning, and leave me standing in the kitchen staring at a second coffee mug like a fool. He showed up at 2 a.m. the next night. I heard the key turn and was halfway off the couch before the door even opened. There he was, soaked from the rain again, hoodie dripping, eyes puffy, silent. I didn't yell. I didn't ask questions right away. I just stepped forward and grabbed a towel from the hook and tossed it to him. "Bathroom's warm," I said. "Go change." He looked at me for a second like he wasn't sure I meant it. Then he nodded and disappeared down the hall. When he came out, he was in dry clothes, mine, and holding his wet hoodie like something fragile. He looked exhausted. He didn't speak. I handed him tea, sat down across from him. After a few minutes, I asked, "Want to tell me where you went?" He stared at the mug in his hands. I saw my brother. That caught me off guard. "You have a brother?" "Had. Kinda. Half-brother. We don't talk." "You did now?" He nodded. "He reached out. Said he wanted to make things right. Turns out he just wanted to borrow money." I waited. He went on, voice low. "We used to live together. Him, my mom, me. She died. He kicked me out 2 weeks later." Silence. "He told me I was freeloading," Ryan added, his jaw tightening. "Said I'd never figure my shit out." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I just watched him. He looked up after a moment. I didn't mean to disappear. I needed to know if anything he said still had power over me. I swallowed. "And did it?" His fingers gripped the mug a little tighter. "It did for a minute, but not now." That night, he didn't ask to sleep in my bed. He just walked into the room, peeled off the hoodie, and slid under the covers like it was home. I followed. He didn't reach for me right away. But later, in the dark, his voice came quiet. I don't want to disappear on you again. You don't have to. Another pause. Can I stay? I turned toward him. You already are. We didn't say, I love you. Not then. But we started saying other things that meant almost the same. Text me when you leave. Take my charger. Here, I made 2 sandwiches. You want me to pick up anything? Little things. But I heard them, and I knew what they meant. Things settled after that. Not in the way where life suddenly became perfect, but in the quiet way where you stopped looking for reasons to pull away. Ryan didn't leave again without telling me, and I didn't pretend not to care when he was gone. We still didn't call it anything. But we were building something. You could feel it in the small stuff, like how he started doing the grocery runs without asking. Always got the peanut butter I liked, even though he preferred crunchy. Or how I started setting 2 towels out in the bathroom without thinking. Or how he always fell asleep with his leg touching mine, just enough to know I was there. One night, we went to a friend's party together. I hadn't planned to bring him, but when I was getting ready, he was sitting on the bed, scrolling through his phone, and he just looked up and said, "You want me to come with?" I said yes before I thought too hard about it. It was a rooftop thing. String lights, too many people pretending to know wine, awkward conversations about startups. I hated those kinds of parties. But with Ryan there, it felt easier. He stuck close. Not clingy, just near. Like a quiet presence I didn't have to manage. At one point, he made a joke to a couple of strangers that actually got a laugh, and when I looked over at him, he was already looking at me. Later, as we stood near the edge, watching the skyline, I said, "You're good at this." "At what?" "Pretending we belong here." He smiled. "We do belong here. Wherever you are, that's where I belong." It hit me like a punch to the chest. Not dramatic, not flashy, just true. Back home, he pulled me into bed without saying much. His kisses were slow, a little hungry, but not rushed. We didn't undress all the way. We didn't need to. Sometimes being that close was more about trust than anything physical. That night, afterward, we lay tangled together, my face against his chest, his hand brushing slow circles on my back, and he whispered something I almost didn't catch. "I'm scared of how much I like you." I didn't say anything at first. I just kissed his collarbone and whispered back, "Me too." A week later, I came home to him making dinner. Not reheating takeout. Not boiling noodles and calling it a night. Actual dinner. He didn't look up when I walked in. Just said, "Hope you're hungry." Like this was a normal Thursday. It wasn't. He'd lit a candle, played music, wore a button-up like he was trying too hard, and pretending he wasn't. "What is this?" I asked, smiling as I dropped my bag. He finally turned. "A night that didn't suck." I stepped closer. "What's the occasion?" He looked a little nervous. "No occasion. I just wanted to do something good." And I got it. He wasn't just feeding me. He was trying to say something without saying it. So I said it for him. "I love you, you know." He froze. Then he smiled, slow and real. "I was hoping you'd say that first." That night, we did everything slow, like we were memorizing it. Touch, breath, hands tangled in shirts. He pressed his forehead against mine more than once, kept his eyes open, like he wanted to see every second of it. We didn't talk much, didn't need to. When it was over, we lay there, both of us breathless and quiet. And then he said it. "I love you too." No drama, no music swell, just 4 words in a dark room from a guy who once broke into my apartment and stayed. After that night, everything changed, even though on the surface, nothing did. He still left socks all over the place, still never capped the toothpaste, still used my coffee mug, even though I'd told him not to. But now, when I'd pretend to be annoyed, he'd just grin and kiss my neck and say, "You loved me, remember?" And I did. God, I really did. We didn't talk about the future right away, but we started doing future things. He signed up for a part-time job at a warehouse nearby. Nothing glamorous, but steady. Said he wanted to contribute. I told him he already did. He rolled his eyes and kissed me anyway. We made a shared calendar, a stupid little whiteboard stuck to the fridge. My client deadlines. His shifts. Who was supposed to cook. None of it mattered much. We ignored it half the time, but it felt like something solid. Like we were saying, we live here, together. One night, I found him asleep on the couch with a book open on his chest. Not a phone, not a screen, a real paperback with a cracked spine and dog-eared pages. I sat beside him quietly, careful not to wake him, just watching his chest rise and fall. The apartment was warm, humming with the radiator's lazy clunking. Outside, the city was wrapped in winter, and I realized I wasn't just in love with Ryan. I was in love with this, the whole life we'd accidentally built. The slow mornings, the silent coffee sips, the way he always threw one leg over mine in his sleep like it was habit, the way he laughed harder at my dumbest jokes. I never had anything feel this real. Then, one morning, he said it. He was brushing his teeth, standing in his boxers, toothpaste foam on his lip like a kid, and he just mumbled, "We should get a dog." I blinked at him in the mirror. "What?" He spat, wiped his mouth, and shrugged. "A dog. You said you always wanted one, right?" "Yeah, but..." He looked at me, and I got it. This wasn't about the dog. It was about staying. About making roots. About building something beyond shared takeout and sleepy I love yous. "You serious?" He nodded. "You think I'd say that if I wasn't?" I walked over and kissed his forehead, toothpaste and all. "Okay," I said. "Let's do it." We didn't get a dog that day, but we started looking. And that's when I knew, whatever we had, it wasn't temporary anymore. Later that week, we were curled up on the couch, a blanket over our legs, both of us watching some bad detective show we'd seen 100 times. His head rested against my chest, my fingers playing absent-mindedly with the edge of his shirt. "I used to think I wasn't good at love," he said out of nowhere. I looked down. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," he shrugged. "Like I always messed it up. Or picked the wrong people. Or ran when it got too good." He didn't look at me when he said it. "I almost ran this time," he added, quieter now. "I know," I said. "But you didn't." He finally looked up. "I didn't," he whispered, "because this feels like the first time I don't have to," and I just held him closer. Because I felt the same. We never officially said, "Let's move in together." It just happened. One day I realized his name was on the electric bill. His boots sat by the door. His jacket hung next to mine. Our socks were tangled in the same drawer. And when he said, "I'm going home," he meant here. That was enough. We did eventually get the dog. A three-legged mutt from the shelter, with huge ears and no concept of personal space. Ryan named him Juno, because he looks like he's been to war and came out cooler than the rest of us. The first night, Juno slept between us on the bed, snoring louder than both of us combined. I complained, but Ryan just smiled, wrapped his arm around me, and said, "He's family now." And that word, it stuck. Family. One night, months later, we walked back from a late dinner. Cold air. Quiet streets. Juno trailing behind us on the leash like a sleepy toddler. Ryan stopped on the sidewalk and looked at me under a street lamp. "You know I never planned for this, right?" he said. "For dinner? For any of it. You, us, the dog, this life." I smiled. "Yeah, me neither." He stepped closer. His hand found mine, fingers lacing easily, like we'd been doing it our whole lives. "But I'm glad it happened," he said. "I didn't think I got to have this. I thought this kind of thing was for other people." "It's for us too," I told him. And right there, on that quiet block, under that flickering streetlight, with Juno tugging at the leash and my hand in his, Ryan kissed me. No drama, no music. Just two people who'd stopped running and started calling something home.